But first, let's let's go back to where we were
Yeah.
before we started recording, which is I drink beer like almost every day. So
Yeah.
So usually what I do is I do what I like to call the KJ Sorka detox, which he's like the drummer from Pendulum and stuff. And what he does is the first 3 months of every year, like January, February, and March, he doesn't drink. And then he kind of just like slowly ramps it up throughout the year, I guess, until he's sort of, drinking a bunch. And then he does that again at the start of every year. It's like kind of hitting a reset button.
Yeah.
I did that last year, but on top of that, I also did Dry July and Sober October.
Shit.
But I found that basically the other 7 months of the year, I was still drinking like every single day. So this year, I'm trying something slightly different where I do like 1 month on, 1 month off, 1 month on, 1 month off.
Yeah.
But yeah, still I find on the months that I drink, I still basically drink every day, which is like, dude, I have like these fucked up like self-discipline issues and like these fucked up like problems with like moderating anything, like even music writing. Like I can't moderate it. It's either like 12 hours a day or none.
yeah. That's oh man, I feel like there's so much to talk about because that's it. Because from what I looked at, just reading into you a bit, watching some interviews, like I've read or heard you work like 8 hours a day in music production.
At least. Yeah.
Fuck, that's crazy, man. Has it always been? And honestly, dude, like, fuck it. I just want to start right here, dude. Has this always just been from the start, like an obsession? I read you started writing music at like age 5.
Yeah, I didn't really start at age 5. Like, I kind of like I was listening to music when I was 5, and like I was sort of messing around with like keyboards and stuff because my parents just had that stuff like laying around the house and whatnot. But I was I was definitely not like serious about music until I would say about like 15 or something like that, or maybe 14, because like I started getting into guitar like heavily and started like doing actual like private tuition. And then when I went to school, I was like doing drums and stuff. And then I went and did like some extra courses after school for drums, and then went and did like an audio engineering degree. And like the whole thing just sort of started piling up.
It just became an obsession at that point.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I read that Metallica, and like early on, it was a lot of metal, right?
Yeah, totally. So when I was playing guitar, it was mostly Metallica stuff. But now I can't see how that worked because I fucking hate Metallica now. It's not that I hate it's not that I hate them. It's that like whenever I listen to it, I'm like, God, this is so cheesy. Like, you
mean like new Metallica or old Metallica?
Yeah, new Metallica. Yeah, old Metallica is actually pretty sick still. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's like I would love to meet those guys and chat with them, but like, and they're still like what they were and like always will be massive inspirations to me. But like, I can't ever see myself like not unironically listening to it anymore or something. Like it just seems like it's too. I don't know. It seems so cheesy. And I think the only reason why is because I've gotten into this whole world of like extremely subtle electronic music where like everything about it that's cool is the subtleties, like the sound design selection or like the minor edits or like, how good the mix down is, like stupid shit like that. Whereas like with them, it's just all about like the blatant musical idea.
Right. Exactly. It's just these like amazing, and I love old Metallica, man. It's when I was young, I grew up around that same music. I never had the obsession with Metallica that like maybe my friends did, but I had a deep appreciation for some of those amazingly well-written songs, and the melody of those songs it's second to none. And I mean, they're icons forever because of that. So it is interesting because it was like raw and like, and hey, I'll agree 100%. Like I'll listen. There's a documentary on Metallica and I tried to listen to some of the new stuff and I was like, I mean, they're just old now.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, they've written like and released hundreds of songs. So it's like, at some point you got to start wearing out your ideas. But I think who the fuck else would have written Nothing Else Matters, by just twanging on like 4 open strings on the guitar and then being like, oh, that's a song.
But it works, you know. Sometimes it's funny to talk with you about that because your music is so technical and it's amazing in the technicality.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, I almost like won't think something is like done or even like remotely even complete unless I've like invested a certain amount of effort, because I almost put like value on effort invested. Whereas like if I just twanged 4 strings on a guitar, I'd be like, that's not enough effort. Like I haven't done enough, you know? Whereas it almost like takes some level, I think, of genius or whatever to do that and be like, yeah, that's fine. Like don't do anything more to it. Except, you know, start adding more notes and shit, I suppose.
Yeah. It's funny. One thing that I don't even how this is just such a funny reason this came up earlier, but I was watching a video on, it's like a documentary on Jack White from the White Stripes. And that song from I was never a huge White Stripes fan, but that riff for Seven Nation Army is the same idea, you know, like da, 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 da. It's so simple, and it became a chance at fucking football stadiums now since then, you know, and it's insane. It's such a simple idea. And it was funny because when he first came up with that, he would show it to, I forget her name, but the drummer in the band, he'd show it to other people and
Meg
no
White.
one really picked. Yeah, Meg White. Yeah.
He's like, hey, Meg, just fucking slam on that tom. Just douche, 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 douche. It'll be fine. Trust me. She's like, I don't trust you, dude.
Yeah, exactly. Because her drumming was definitely not the best.
Yeah.
But it's funny because no one picked that up, and he's like, no, this is gonna hit. Like this is gonna be something interesting. And
yeah, it takes like some level of seeing something that no one else sees to be able to do genius stuff. And I always think like the most genius stuff is when like you can tell something is like massively intelligent, but it's also so simple and satisfying. And like a perfect representation of that in the electronic music scene, I think, is like G Jones. He's just so good at like, you know, using really simple tools in ways that no one else has thought of.
Yeah. And
doing like really interesting stuff that I just don't think anyone else really thought of or had the balls to do.
Right. And I would say Deadmau5 too, and the same idea that the tracks can be very simple.
Yeah, and it's just like saw wave chords and a kick drum.
yeah. Oh yeah. And it's
always so satisfying though, just the way he does it.
Yeah, totally. And I love that he has he's just fucking Deadmau5. He's stuck to that sound. It's simplistic, but he still has built out this catalog of music over years and years and years that everything is so different, but it all just has such a unique sound to it. And that I think is where real genius comes out, where you can have this idea that flows through different kind of genres he'll touch on, but it's his sound, you know, that's incredible.
Yeah, I think it was I can't remember what podcast it was, but I listened to him on a podcast. It might have been Joe Rogan or it might have been the H3 podcast, where he was talking about literally all he did was mix trance with Trent Reznor. And I was like, yeah, that's a pretty good accurate description of what you did. Yeah. But it works.
Yeah.
You know, like taking that trance sound, which was so euphoric, but instead of making it really like sappy and uplifting and like, you know, all that shit, he made it like dark and like really kind of melancholic, and it worked out so well.
Oh,
and again, it takes like a fucking genius, right? To see like, oh, I can take this thing and just mix it with this other thing and it'd be so sick.
Right.
You know, like it's such a simple idea, like taking Trent Reznor-esque style melodies, mix it with trance, but nobody else chose to do that.
Yeah. And I just love also how he's not all, you know, he just makes it so simple. He's just like, yeah, this is what I did. You know, he's not totally self-absorbed with what he does, which just makes it all that much, you know, much more, at least from my perspective, I can appreciate it on a much different level because he's just so down to earth about it. But I love that aspect where I've watched videos where he will talk about how he would come up with kicks where he would slap his ass, and people would ask, you know, well, how'd you make that kick? It's so amazing. And he's like, little secret, I slap my ass and mix it into the kicks or into the snares. I think kicks or snare, I forget.
Yeah, I've heard that as well. I think it was a clap. Yeah, like it
was a clap. Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, you can do that for sure. Like layering is layering interesting stuff into the mix is always good fun, and always I mean, layering is necessary. If you don't do enough layering, I think the track ends up just sounding boring. And sometimes layering obscure stuff like that, like the sound of an ass slap, or the sound of like you hitting a frying pan under the water, or something, like just some dumb shit like that.
Right.
Which at this point you don't need to really record anything. Like most of the samples have been recorded for you by people on Splice or whatever. But yeah, just finding good combos of layering and stuff can be good fun.
Would you say, are you at this stage doing a lot of that? Are you pulling a lot of stuff from Splice, or is there just a crazy back catalog of samples you have over 10 years of producing?
A bit of both. Yeah, I have a lot of my own library from field recording and stuff like that. And I also have like tons of shit from like my modular synth, and then I have tons of just random stuff I've come across just from like messing around with synthesizers and all that. And then usually I'll dip into that first, but if I like just want a really specific thing, like, oh, I want that crane bamboo snare right now, like obviously I'm just going to go get the crane bamboo snare, like rather than try and reinvent the wheel, or, like a cheesy, like trippy turtle riser or something, like, I would just go pull that from a pack or whatever rather than try and make it. Like some sounds you want to use the actual one, like the arm end break, you're not going to try and re-record an arm end break. It won't sound like an arm end break.
Right. So when you're working, I mean, this is awesome, because it's something that I've thought about when I listen to your music. When you're going in, there's a lot of stuff on YouTube to kind of reference, but when you're going in and working on a new track, what's that process like? Because you have so many things at your disposal, right? Different sound banks that you've pulled together over years, like you can reference Splice, etc. But my understanding, when I would listen to other interviews with you, watch some of your stuff on YouTube, you're kind of working as this give and take with your computer. Like you put it as like an input output system where you're like putting things in and you're like, what's coming out here? And then you're working, and it's this almost collaborative experience with the DAW at that stage.
Yeah, well, I listened to this thing by Maynard James Keenan once, the guy from Tool, and he explained himself as like a reactive artist. Like he's not like really creative, he's very reactive, meaning like if you give him like something, he can do something with it, but he's pretty bad at like creating ideas from scratch. And I would say I'm kind of the same. So what I react to is just things that I make the computer do. So I like set up some sort of like sound design system, like a giant chain of effects that like acts kind of like a Rube Goldberg machine, like maybe you'll have like a one shot that goes into like a reverb, and then that reverb gets sent through like some wave shaper, and then the wave shaper like glitches it out, and then the glitchy stuff gets like rearranged by some weird plugin, and then like I'll set up some shit like that, and then I'll just run tons of shit through it and just see what comes out. It's kind of like the same thing that Mick Gordon did with the Doom soundtrack. He just set up like some crazy instrument out of like guitar effects and hardware and just started running sine waves through it.
Oh yeah.
So I do that kind of stuff a lot. And then whatever comes out the other end, I'm like, oh, that gives me an idea, But it's like,
right.
In that sense, like I don't even really believe that I had the idea, Like I just set a thing up, pressed a button, and then it gave me an idea.
Yeah, I love that, because I have, I've been able to speak with a lot of different people on this topic, and at times that same idea is expressed where people feel like they are kind of a receiver either for a creative idea, like something just pops in their head and they're like, oh, that's a great melody, let me go work on this in the DAW and develop this into something that's like, where the fuck did that idea even come from? And then you're expressing in the same kind of idea that this input into Ableton, throwing something through a bunch of different inputs, really like some sort of chain you developed, and then seeing what comes out on the other side will at least spark something where you're like, oh, I can go and turn this into X, Y, and Z because it's giving me some ideas on that. It's interesting because it makes you think like it's not this process where someone sits down and there's a blank template and then boom, genius just falls on the. I
never think that was the case. Like if you listen to people talk about like the Beatles, like if you listen to them talk about their writing process, they'd just be sitting around like on fucking drugs or not, and just like fucking around with an electric guitar or acoustic guitar or something, or like, pissing about with like a thumb piano or just something. And then all of a sudden one of them is like, oh, that gives me an idea, It's like they're also reactive artists, I reckon. Like, I don't really think creativity is like this one-way street that a lot of people think about it, like, where they're just kind of like, oh, these fucking artist creators like just have this insane ability to just like envision a whole thing and be like, bam, I'm gonna go make that right now. Like, that's just not how it works, especially for someone who's working at this shit like every day. You can't expect that to happen every day, but you kind of have to work every day. You can't like, if you want to be successful and you want to make a living of this stuff, especially if you're working on projects like scoring film, or like, working on I don't know, if you're making sample packs even, or if you're like making an album even, like, fuck, it would take you so long to make an album if you had to wait around every time for that to happen. Like,
sitting there waiting.
It would be like impossible, I reckon. Like, you get one album done in a lifetime, maybe.
Yeah. No, that it's funny because I think from a perspective of people starting out, right? People that are getting started in electronic music or really whatever, and they see or listen to these artists who they love, there's this idea that it's like, oh my God, there's genius behind here. This is just this incredible just wealth of inspiration through these tracks, and this creative genius or whatever. But it comes down to that process where it's like, you got to work every day and you work on it, and then stuff comes out. You work on, you just keep, you kind of use this analogy of this like input output system with Ableton, and stuff comes out that triggers ideas, and that's what develops into the tracks.
Yeah, pretty much. And I think, like I said, I think everyone has always done that. I think like even in the caveman days and stuff, it was probably like that, like they do one thing and they're like, oh, that made a little bit of spark, that gives me an idea. And then they like make a fire, or like, or they're like, oh, you got like this little rock thing and you're holding it in your hand, like jamming it into a fucking tree to try and break the tree open or something like that. They're like, oh, that gives me an idea to like put a handle on it,
Right. Yeah. That's probably how we evolved, like those were the humans that at that stage probably had this evolutionary advantage. So they were mating, and then we're just now the primed to go in and put something in and get some feedback and be like, oh, this is something, and let's go turn it into this thing, Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, I think that's pretty empirical analysis.
yeah, exactly. We cracked it right there. No, that oh, that's funny, man. But there. So I was listening to an interview with you, and you were kind of speaking about hard determinism versus free will, and I think that is really interesting in this whole conversation because everyone is set, and for people that aren't familiar with the terms hard determinism versus free will, like. You stated it really well in the interview. Like, hard determinism is this idea that based on your criteria, whoever you are, you don't really have these free choices. It's just you have this set of criteria that based on how you're gonna act is just kind of almost like a reaction from who you are. Does that?
Well, I think that like my whole fucking thing almost stands on the thing that you don't choose your spawn conditions. Mm-hmm. So like you don't choose your parents and you don't choose where you were born. So for instance, like there's a good chance if you were born in like Hyderabad, India or something, that you would currently be a practicing Muslim, or at least have like some Indian values, which are very different, I think, to like Western values. But maybe that's not the case. Like maybe you would have ended up a psytrance producer traveling the world or something like that. And even still, it's like were your choices even, why did the spawn conditions make you go one way or the other? Like it was probably just because of some other extenuating factor that you also had no control over, So I think like the whole thing is just, it really doesn't get you anything to like think this way. All it really gets you, I think, is a little bit of empathy. Because when you start which is a tough thing to talk about because, when you think about, I think Sam Harris said it the best way when he brought up the thing about, what's his name, Saddam Hussein's son. And he was like, he's the kind of guy who will go to a wedding and rape the bride and fucking kill the groom, like he's like a absolute psychopath. But
Right.
he had the unfortunate circumstance of being born as Saddam Hussein's son. So it's like, you know, who's to say that you would have been better if you had been born as Saddam Hussein's son? You know, you might have been the same innocent child who was born and grew up to become a fucking psychopath who would go to weddings and rape brides and kill grooms.
Right.
So, I mean, like in that sense, I don't necessarily think we have that much free will. But if you believe in hard determinism, then in that sense, that's to say that you might have a little bit of empathy for somebody like Uday Hussein to be like, well, that's, you know, it's just some innocent kid who you walk forward 40 years and he's a fucking piece of shit.
Right. Right.
But that's not a good argument to talk about publicly because a lot of people will just be like, you're fucked. How could you possibly think that? It's like definitely a hard pill to swallow for most people.
Yeah. It's so interesting to speak about because that idea of hard determinism, setting this path, right, is one thing. And then when I so I'd listened to those Sam Harris talks. He's been on Joe Rogan, and so I've listened to those interviews, and I've watched a couple other things on YouTube. And when you really start to think about this idea of hard determinism and the idea that when you try and observe your thoughts, you know, what's really creating these reactions, and then when you think about, oh, I just lifted my left arm, you know, it's like, what triggered that? Sometimes it's just totally reactionary. And the ideas that come into your mind, they're you have no control of them. Ideas come into your brain and it's just, and the conversation in your head is involuntary. So it starts to paint a really interesting picture when you start to think about these things. Is like, what real action do I have? But then a person can say, I'm not going to work tomorrow, you know? And that's, I guess that's more of like a cult, like a cultural, or maybe that's already predetermined too, you know?
Yeah, but also like that thought of I'm not going to go into work tomorrow because like I think free will is bullshit or something like that. Or I think, you know, oh no, I have free will and I'm going to prove it by not going into work tomorrow. It's like that could also be determined based on like the fact that you were about to find out about this because you were born in this certain time with these certain parents in this certain like Western world where people started to, well, I think they started philosophizing about this stuff originally in Greece, but you know, once you found out about that, it had a certain inverse reaction for you to not go to work. And in that sense, like it also doesn't really give you free will.
Yeah. Cause you're right. Like I could be the person who have these weird criteria where I would, based on my whatever, like my entire past, who I am as a person, all these different factors, would be the person that says, I'm not going to work tomorrow. But that's just based on all those predeterministic facts. So you don't know. You have no fucking idea. It's weird.
And then like, yeah, there's some argument that people give you is like, yeah, but what if everything's just like, you know, roll of the dice and random? And it's like, well, that still doesn't give you free will because that's just a fucking bunch of random shit going on then.
Yeah.
It's like either you're just someone in this fucking random place. Again, if you're coming across random reactionary shit all the time, then you really don't get free will out of that either.
Right. It's really interesting to think about, and so much comes down to circumstance, and which ties into this because, you know, if I was born in a, you know, different part of the world, and if I was born into, you know, if I was born into, you know, Saddam Hussein being my father, this is going to go over super well. You know, so there wouldn't be this podcast, you know, like the things that I enjoy doing today, I wouldn't be doing, and maybe I wouldn't even have access to do those things. So much of these things, I think we say, I've been very fortunate, I've been very lucky to have, can be maybe. It's interesting to play with those ideas because it could just be totally happen chance, you know. If maybe this is really fun to think about too. So if ever I'm like, life is fucked, it's short, who knows what the hell's going to happen, and just to think like, okay, if you go back 40 ancestors, you know, and one of those ancestors dies, you know, before having the 39th ancestor, or, you know, I wouldn't be here, right?
Yeah.
That's all these things behind this crazy exponential chain behind us had to happen for you and I to be sitting here having this conversation.
Yeah. I mean, also you could think about it if you're having a bad day, in the sense that like we're literally experiencing like this tiny slice of like the actual age of the universe and the actual age of existence. as far as we know it. It's like the slice that we're experiencing is like paper thin on like, you know, something as long as this table, you know, or longer.
Right. Yeah. I'll think about that a lot, like the unknown of what's going to happen after this lifetime. Where I'm like, well, I was unalive for billions of years before this.
Right. Like human existence, I think is like just the existence of humans as a species is like such a transient thing. That the fact that we got to experience it at all is insane in the scope of the length of the universe and stuff like that.
Yeah, to just be and to be at a time right now where with modern science we understand that we're made up of atoms, and atoms are forged, like the atoms in our body are forged out of dying stars. Like that's relatively new. You know, there was a lot of generations before us that had no idea about that, and that's incredibly strange to go. And my girlfriend studies material science, and she works on these electron microscopes that look at atomic structures, you know, and she's looking at these atomic structures and getting these high resolution images of these. And then that's what we're fucking made up
Wait,
of.
you said your girlfriend does this?
Yeah.
Crazy. Wait, what does she do?
So she is, she's about to finish her PhD in material science and engineering. So we're out here in Arizona, and you're in Colorado, right? So we're like,
yep,
right around the corner. Yeah. So she's at ASU. And that's honestly the extent of what I understand, because she will go really, really deep on it. But she uses these electron microscopes to study materials and understand how certain materials interact. And it's the overarching application is for renewable energy. So it's a good reason to be working in this field. But then what she does is so pinpointed on one tiny thing that it's hard to like really understand that application, if that makes sense.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it sounds fucking crazy. I always have so much respect for people who do stuff like that. It's like, dedicating your life to some like some crazy shit like that.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it's the same way that people feel about like musicians too. They're like, oh man, you dedicate your life to like this fucking thing just so I can sit out here and enjoy it. It's like, bro, it's not all about you. Like, it's like kind of the same the same idea I have about scientists. It's like, wow, you dedicate your life all to this just so I can fucking get a no cancer when I'm 50. Right. It's like, come on, bro. They do it for other reasons.
Exactly, dude. No. I mean, you're right on. It's so funny because from the other perspective, because I've seen both. You know, I've spoken with her, people in her research group, and then I speak with me, and each side is like, wow, you do this, but then from the perspective, like, all right, this is just what I do. It's not a big deal, you know. And it's funny to learn more about that world because there's not a ton of money in academia, but the reward, it's really funny because from an outside perspective, we see it as very altruistic. You know, they're doing research to benefit the world, but oftentimes at the personal level, it's kind of this ego. It can be, depending on who, but this ego-driven thing where it's like, I've done the research, I've produced this paper, et cetera, et cetera. So it's funny when you really dig into it, like what the motives are behind it, because from our perspective, can be different. Not her, but people she works with, just to clarify.
Yeah. Well, I imagine like, you know, somebody who dedicates their life to something like solving some really obscure fucking health problem that, you know, 1 in a million people get or something like that, and eventually crack it. Like, it's got to be rewarding for them in some other way other than, actually getting any, like, let's say they or like none of their family members ever had like that disease or whatever, yet they dedicate their whole life to it. I'm sure there's cases like this out there of scientists who have done this. There's got to be some other reason why they do it. Like, you know, after cracking it, it's just got to be the most like rewarding thing or something. Or even just making like small little steps along the way, like little progress and stuff has got to be pretty rewarding too.
Yeah.
And I can kind of empathize with that based on doing some Max MSP stuff. It's like you do, like, it's something that I'm not solving any problems at all, and just making like small little steps along the way in a patch and like solving these little things will make me like so stoked and like more stoked than like finishing a new piece of music even.
Yeah, well, dude, I wanted to ask about that because when I watch your videos and your approach for when you're working on music, you have the craziest technical understanding of Ableton. And in some of your videos, you will reference I honestly laughed when I saw in some of the videos, in a good way, you would reference like clips from the documentation. I'm like, who the fuck I mean this in a great way, like who references the documentation? Cause it's so technical. So I was like, kudos to you. Cause you like went in and you're like, I actually understand what the fuck's going on. Where a lot of people who will make, YouTube tutorials like just press these different things.
Attach the LFO to the cutoff.
yeah. And make it wub. Yeah. So you really have this crazy deep understanding within the DAW. So it made me think, like, when you were growing up, I know you studied audio engineering, but even earlier than that, did you have interest in technical applications like math or physics? Was that of interest to you? Because you just seem to, like, you're so technically slated.
Nah, man, this is like the only thing that I'm like that with. Like, legitimately, you could ask me like any math, like the simplest math question, like 7 + 14 or something, and I'd be like, I'd have to be like I'm actually thinking about it. 17, 18, like 21. Like it takes me a minute to like do simple maths, man. I'm so fucking bad at it. And like physics, I mean, not really. Like, I guess like I can't. It's hard to test because I don't really know much about physics, but I know I'm really bad at like construction, like measuring stuff and cutting stuff, and like I just built this room. I'm so bad at it. And I mean, that's funny, kind of like physics in some way, because you're like, all right, I'll get like this little amount of thing here and here. And like, like hanging these panels like up the back here in the corner, the tri-traps, I couldn't even do it. I had to get a friend to do it because I was just like, I can't even fucking like work it out in my head how that's possible.
I was, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, it turns out French cleats are the answer for hanging that. It's just weird shit like that. I'm so fucking bad at it. And generally, like I play chess a lot as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that could be like another measure of intelligence or like technical intelligence. And I'm not that amazing at it either. And I play like 10 games of chess a day on my phone. Like I'm rated like 1100 ELO, which is not that good. Like a grandmaster is like 2500. And sorry, go on.
Do you? No. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Do you play on like Yahoo Games? Because I did the same. I was playing chess on my phone
chess.com.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. I was just gonna say, like, to round it off. Yeah, like there's like on all the ways that I can measure my intelligence in other ways. I don't really think like I'm that impressive in any other field. It's like for some reason just Ableton, and I really think all it was that I just got like a real unhealthy obsession with it way before anybody else did. Like when I started with Ableton, there wasn't a lot of people using it, and so I've just got a few years on everyone, I think.
It's interesting because before, I don't even know if we got it in the episode. I think we were talking about this before, but you're saying like you have this unhealthy obsession where you will pick things up and just dive into them, and it's either 0% or 100%, and you will just dive in. But honestly, my guess is whatever that application would be, I'm happy it's music because you make awesome music and you make awesome tutorials. I've learned a lot about Ableton just by watching, but my guess is anything that you applied that to, it would end up being this obsession. Because I studied, so when I did undergrad, I went back and I took math courses and physics courses. And I think from an outside perspective, it's this idea that, and I went into this thinking this, like, you have to be so smart to understand. But it's funny because when you drill these things down with math, it actually ends up being kind of repetitive. Like you understand kind of techniques to apply, a lot like music producing. Like when you'll like understand these techniques and you'll pick up on a couple ideas. You're like, oh, I see A, B, and C. Like I know I have to do these 3 steps. So it's just funny that way, man. And my guess is just by listening to the music, listening to your tutorials, and watching your live shows. Like that blew my mind. I watched the YouTube video you did with, I forget the channel. It's like Tech.
Oh, DJ Tech Tools.
Yeah, DJ Tech Tools. Yeah, and you showed like your live setup.
The Max thing with all like the coding on the clips.
Yeah, dude. My mind. What my cousin sent it to me because he did production a long time before I did, and he's much more technical. So he will dive into things like that. And he found that video. He's like, dude, did you see this? And I wrote back. I was like, dude, my mind is blown, man. I would never in a million years figure out how to do that.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I didn't figure out how to do that either. That was my friend Tom Cosm who kind of like came up with well, actually, it was either Tom Cosm or Woolg or a combination of the two who like helped me with that a lot. But like all I came up with was the concept. I was like, what I want to do is trigger a clip, and when I trigger that clip, I wanted to just like have the cut version of that clip in a sampler so I can play it. And and he was like, well, this could be a way to do it. Like just write some like hashtags and stuff on like the clip, and then that could change a chain selector. And I was like, oh yeah, that would make sense. But ever since then, I've found a more clever way to do it with this program called CliffX. And it was made by a guy called Stray. And again, I didn't even figure out how to do it. Stray told me how to do it. But like you just like write a line of code on a clip. Whatever clip you're currently playing, you just like click this X clip, like an action clip with a bunch of text on it, and it just takes whatever 16 bars of that clip is playing, creates a new MIDI channel, loads a simpler into it, loads that 16 bars into the simpler, and then puts it on slice mode on quarter notes so you can do the same thing. And then if you click the X clip again, it deletes that MIDI channel that it just created, creates another one, and then takes the current playing 16 bars and performs all those actions again. So it's like this totally like malleable setup that will work and doesn't cause any like buffer issues and stuff.
Oh, that's sick. Do you still then, when you're I'm trying to visualize like what's going on then. So do you still have everything kind of clumped together by key then? Because I saw in Ableton you would piece together, or you'd kind of clump together certain tracks that were in the same key so they could mix together, and you were using I forget the name of the wheel now, but
the Camelot wheel.
Camelot wheel, yeah.
Yeah, I still do that. These days I mostly have just been DJing, but yeah, I still use the Camelot wheel for all of that stuff. Just because I feel like mixing in key is so much nicer than just mixing via BPM. But even still, like these days I've been writing a lot of like more heavy stuff, like bangers. And I've been noticing that like for starters, most of them are in the key of F. And then secondly, even if they're not in the same key, because they're bangers, you can kind of just play them next to each other and it just works. Like, because the bass just sort of goes up and down enough to like, bend into the next tune or something.
Yeah, that's cool. I've always like when I started watching those videos, I thought that was so fresh and so needed that as stupid as that fucking sounds, but really like not just going in and saying like I have my CDJs and pressing play, you know. It's nice to see that there's this whole live component. Like you had the shows where you play with Hutch, and that's so sick because it shows that there's this incredible technical process in this live show versus just I mean, that's the stuff that drives me nuts. And I know some people, I don't mean to call out anyone. I just mean in general, when you watch live shows and their CDJs and they're just pretending to turn knobs. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I think like a lot of electronic music is the reason it's like that is because the performer knows that it can be like that and they'll still have no issues getting shows and getting paid. And secondly, it's just tough. Like, I mean, you spend so long making the music perfectly. Like, you'll spend fucking 20 minutes on like an edit, just like a little drum fill, like that happens for a millisecond. And then it's like, you can't obviously spend 20 minutes doing that live. So what are you going to do live? You have to like figure out something that's humanly possible to do in the music that you can do. And then you also have to figure out just, some way that it's going to actually still sound good. Because what I've noticed is the liver you make something, the bigger of a fidelity hit you take to the music. So to the point of like, obviously something like, do you know Iodo? So it's like, they're a complete live electronic band and they're fucking awesome. Like to watch them live is great. But like fidelity wise, it doesn't sound that amazing. And the reason why is because it's so live, like you can't get everything specifically tight, to like, like one issue that I've found with a lot of students that will bring me mix downs and stuff like that is quite often why their mix down isn't that good is due to like compositional deficiencies, you know, like the hi-hat just won't be like properly quantized or sitting with the beat right, or, you know, the basses will all just be a little off, or like the sidechain triggering isn't working properly, or just some stupid shit like that. And when you take a live band like Yodo, there's just so much compositional stuff that's going to clash with other stuff, and that's like the cost of being that live, which is cool. Right. Like you can be like the gain of it is that when you watch it, you're like, wow, this is like completely fucking real time, which is really cool. So I don't know, there's like obviously some balance in the middle there that can be cool too. And I feel like most DJs these days, including myself, we all preference onto the side of fidelity, you know?
Yeah. I mean, that does make sense, because it's really interesting, because if you go back to before electronic music is as huge as it is today, you know, you go back to maybe in the States, like, you know, early 2000s, when, I don't know, it seems like the most popular music at the time was like, I was really into like screamo bands, post-hardcore stuff, you know, and you would listen to a mastered track and you expected to go to a show and it to be gritty and fucked up and live and raw. But now the playing field is, you know, so many producers are playing at this high fidelity, as you mentioned. So you kind of have two options. It's either you lose the fidelity and you have this live component, and people who are going for the music and for this experience may be like, oh, this was a, you know, whatever, this, you know, they may not appreciate that live component, and it makes it a weird world to kind of live in, because the playing field is set for this kind of artificial, I don't even want to say artificial, but like it's more kind of a curated track list that isn't as much there's not as much of a live component associated with it.
You mean like even with bands?
Well, no, I just meant in comparison. So it seems like with electronic music, so my point is, like, in the earlier 2000s, electronic music in the States wasn't as popular as it is today. Like 2008, I feel like it just blew up with EDC, you know, and up until then, people were more accustomed to going to live shows and seeing a live band, and they would expect that it might sound kind of close to a master track, but it's going to have that live component. But now people go to a festival and it's just...
And like they want to hear it be super tight, kind of.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, I think that's because like the idea of going to a show has kind of shifted more from let's go to a show to look at what's on stage to let's go to a show to hang out with each other. It's like now you go for more of like an experience rather than, you know, like a performance. And I mean, obviously there's still shows that are more like performance based, like Animals as Leaders, like a really technical metal band or something. You'll go to watch the band, or you know, I don't know, jazz or something. Like you definitely go to watch the playing and go to watch them shred. But something like EDC, you're not going for the artists, you're going for the experience, you know, like you're going to see like giant LED walls and to hang out with little to no clothing on a fuck ton of drugs and listen to a huge sound system do crazy things and hang out with a bunch of strangers and your friends.
Yeah.
Like that's the vibe of it, you know. It's like you go in there to have this crazy experience. You're not really going there for the performance. And I mean, even if you were going for the performance, how the fuck are you going to see it? Like it's so far away and there's so many lights in your face.
Yeah, it's true, man. It's true. It's 100%. And I think I remember I saw Deadmau5 like when it was not his new cube, it was the last one. And you're right. I mean, when you're syncing up with those lights, you have this visual component, all of the animations that go with the cube. I mean, everything's curated, but I know that there was one track where he brought in some experimental pieces with that crazy LED board he has, like that touch sensitive board he has in the cube.
Oh, so that's a giant touchscreen TV thing.
Yeah. But that's like the extent of it, you know, which is cool, but that's, yeah.
Yeah, but again, I mean, like, there's so much stuff that he has to sync up with his show that to make it completely live would be stupid. Like, how are you going to get all the visuals to sync up properly, you know? Like, I actually talked to Joel about this once because I went in the Cube because I opened for him at Red Rocks twice. And I went up there and I was like talking to him about all this live shit. And his response to me was like, yeah, you don't go on, like, it was just after It came out. And he's like, yeah, man, you don't go and see It twice and expect a different result the second time, you know?
Yeah.
Which
people go to see Deadmau5, see The Cube. Yeah.
Exactly. Which basically tells me he's like producing a live performance movie type, like a live movie kind of thing to go and watch. But it's like, rather than be a movie, it's like, you know, a big electronic music experience.
Right.
Which I think is totally fair. And I also think that when somebody is standing behind that much production and having put that much effort into a thing, it's like you can't stand there and be like, oh, this is okay. Like, it's not, it's so impressive, like on any level. Like, he could be the craziest jazz musician ever, and you're not going to go there and base it on his fucking piano shredding abilities, you know? Like, that's not what you go and base that shit on. You go and watch it and you go like, holy shit, like, he wrote all this music. He actually made a lot of the visuals. He, you know, has invested obviously so much of his money back into this whole thing. He's traveled here with a giant team and a huge fucking cube. And like, you know, there's like all of this shit that goes into it. And like, that's what you base the impressiveness on it on, like not the live performance of it, you know?
No, exactly. It's because you're right. He does, of course, all the music, and then he will do a lot of the CGI and stuff and the visual components for the cube. So you're right on everything. It's all this creative output beforehand, and you're going to watch this crazy experience that's been, you know, and you're right. I mean, who could go and see something like that live and think, nah, I don't know. That's insane.
With my sets
We're
these
too
days,
jaded.
yeah, totally. With my sets these days, I kind of think about it from the angle of like, I just think really heavily about my track selection, and I put a lot of effort into like the music that I'm playing. And if I'm playing somebody else's music, I'll always like make an edit of it or something like that. So it's always like completely fresh, and I make a new set every time I play. So it's like when you go to watch me these days, you wouldn't base like why it's cool off like how good I am at mixing, or how good I am at like reading a crowd, or how good I am at like pulling the right track at the right time and mixing it, or like doing some crazy impossible like tempo change or something like that. It's like literally just the whole merit of my thing these days is just track selection and producing, and just like how good it sounds basically.
Right.
And generally that's been pretty good. It's been healthy for me, like personally, for the last few years, because I found like when I was doing the live thing too much, I would spend fucking months, dude, like putting together those sets. And I was like, I'm not even writing new music. It's like, and then I started to think like, if I didn't put all these months into writing, like building these sets, I could be writing 5 to 10 new tunes in that time, you know, and like I could just be playing those in the set. So that's kind of what I do now. I spend like 3 or 4 days before I go on to do a show just putting a new set together. But up until that point, it's all making tunes.
That's a really good point, because it takes away from the time. I mean, there's only so much time, and you're right. If that live component is chewing up a ton of time on the front end to get that prepared, that's time that can go to the music that then can be curated into a set that can be played out. And then as you expressed, like, it's about the track selection. It's about the crazy level of technicality in the songs. And then you get more time to work on that. It makes sense. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. And it's like, I've gone and hung out with people who like kind of DJ on the fly a lot. Mm-hmm. And what I've noticed is like their sets will just be massively hit and miss. Like they'll, and it's the same with bands too, you know, it's like they'll have one show where it just crushes and something magical is going on, and they were just picking the right tracks at the right time, and they were hitting all the drops perfectly, and like the build-ups were like all fucking mixing together in key perfectly, and like everything is just fucking perfect. Mm-hmm. And you're like, crazy, that was so sick. And then you see them another time do the same thing, and it's like the trash, like the most trashiest thing you've ever seen. It's like, wow, all of this is out of key, all of like shoes in the dryer every 2 seconds. Like I've seen that happen with those kind of people too. So it's kind of like, again, like the toss up of you doing that sort of completely on the fly DJing stuff too is that you know, you right. might get a good one, you might get a bad one, which is cool too. It's like, you know, it's a good reason to go see someone a few times if they're doing that kind of thing.
Right. That's true. Yeah.
Whereas like the reason I want to give people to come back and see me multiple times is that, well, for starters, I won't play in the same city like more than once a year. So generally by the time I come back the next time, I have just a whole fresh slate of tunes.
Yeah, that's that. I mean, it's a really good way to put it. It makes perfect sense, because I think from an outsider's perspective that isn't making music, who's just going to shows to enjoy the music, and a lot of times people don't realize the amount of time that producers work on music. I mean, I think sometimes people think, oh, it's like this party lifestyle, and this is really just music. People that go to shows and such, oh, it's this nightlife where people are out a lot DJing, and they've kind of grown this following over time. But really, it's most of the time sitting in a studio for hours and hours and hours on end, working on your craft and developing the music. And then, okay, let's dedicate a small amount of time to curating, not a small amount of time, but like dedicating time to go and do this live set. But the majority of the work is actually in the DAW, working on tracks, making music.
Yeah.
So it makes sense.
Much.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, exactly. Once you're comfortable with that, like as a dynamic, and you can get past all the expectations that you think one might have on like who you should be as a DJ or something like that, then I think you'll end up doing much more impressive stuff, which I think I had to do as well. Like I had to go right around that whole circle of trying a bunch of shit, like I had to try the live thing. I had to try the DJing off the cuff thing. I had to try like just a bunch of shit. And I feel like I've sort of really found my rhythm now with mainly just accepting that I'm a producer and that's kind of where I'm going to put my focus.
Right. But it's awesome because, then it just lends to more time in the DAW. And then, I mean, because anyone that listens to your music can tell, like, holy shit, this is incredibly technical. And there's been an insane amount of time put into to develop the skills to make this kind of music. So
there's another side to think about this too. And that's from the side, the philosophical side of like what constitutes a good life. So like if you think that like, so for instance, if I thought that producing, actually let's do it from the other angle. If I thought that playing live was more fun, but I enjoyed I thought playing live was more fun, but I knew that it wasn't as productive, like in terms of making tunes and in terms of maybe obviously touring live costs a lot more money too, so you make a lot less money. But if I thought that it was fun and then that equaled a better life for me, and that at the end of my life, if I was on my deathbed and you'd be like, what did you spend your life doing? And I was like, oh, fucking, playing live, but I really enjoyed it, so I don't care, then obviously I think that would be more worth doing. But that's another reason why I just produce now and why I just put these sets together that I do, because I just enjoy it way more. Like it's way less effort. I spend more time doing the shit that I actually find fun, and it's just way less stress in general, which, I mean, for me is better. You're going to make better music if you're less stressed, I reckon. Yeah,
that's a really interesting topic to get into. Like what is a well-lived life and what is a fulfilled life? Because
I think for you, like, I'm sorry to cut you off again, but for you, like, it could be like the podcasting versus writing music. It's like, what do you prefer? Do you prefer like talking to people, having conversations, and doing edits of video and audio? Or do you prefer just spending your time in the DAW writing music? And then you obviously have to weigh up like the benefits like of how much you're making off both things, and like, what's going to be better for you economically and all of that kind of stuff too. But yeah, I mean, you can apply this, I think, to most people's lives.
Yeah, it's fun to think about, because I've dabbled with these ideas for a long time, because I pretty much, music has been my passion from a young age. Both my parents are musicians, and when I got to around college years, I really gave it up, and I was like, I'm going to go and get a degree, etc. I fucked around for like 4 years. Then I really got my shit together, got a degree, started working, and realized like I'm not finding a lot of fulfillment out of what I'm doing. So then I kind of took a step back. I'm like, okay, what leads to a good fulfilled life? And And it's a great question to bring up. Like, is it fun? Because I could work and I could drink right at 5 and get super fucked up every night and drink on the weekends and have fun. But what does that lead to, or what leads to a good life? And I think it's a fun question to dabble with, because I think for myself it comes down to where I find the most fulfillment, right? And it's usually some sort of challenging task that I want to work on, and when there's incremental, success is coming from it, then I'm like, oh, I'm getting a lot of positive feedback. I'm enjoying what I'm doing, and for me, at least, that's kind of where I stand today. It's interesting to think about those things, because you do have to make decisions and try and think about like what is it that I'm doing that's going to lead to, when you're there towards the end of your life, looking back, it's like what did I do? Did I enjoy doing it? Did it make a benefit? Did it make any difference? I don't know. They're all very interesting questions. Yeah.
I also think that you can really like tell, like I think humans have like a natural like inclinator like in their brain or whatever to be able to like to see like when someone's doing something that you can tell they're doing just because they fucking are so passionate about it and they love it. They're just doing it because they find it fun. I feel like people like respond a lot better to that stuff than if you're doing something because you think you need to be doing it for like just economical reasons or something, Yeah. And I think that happens a lot in like music, where like you'll see someone who's just like trying to do the heavy Instagram game and getting everything ghost produced and stuff. And sure, they might be like passionate about what they're doing. So it might work for them or something. But then you see these other people who like do the same thing, but you can also tell that they're just not really that passionate about it. Like they're doing it because they think like this whole DJing, ghost producing Instagram game thing can be like very economically viable and lucrative. Mm-hmm. And you see those people never take off because people can just tell. Like I think without you saying a fucking word, like people are not dumb. Like they have, like humans, I think just have this natural thing in their brain to either like, and I think that's the same reason why certain bands get so insanely big too, like say Fish. It's like they're just doing something that they really want to be doing. And I think like everyone can tell, and everyone can like when you go see them like vibe with the fun and stuff. I've never been to a Fish show, so I can't say, and I'm not a fan at all. But like they're just like a giant band, and I know that's. I feel like that's the reason why. I feel like that's the reason why with people like Tipper. Do you know Tipper?
I started listening to him after I started listening to some interviews with you. Or interviews you've done. Yeah.
He's like fucking huge. He's got like a cult following, or like Space Jesus or something like that. Like these people are just like they got these crazy cult followings, man, and like they're not as big as like Deadmau5, but they're not far off. They're kind of like they can do a lot of shows and sell like some pretty big venues out. Like I think Tipper's done Red Rocks, and I think Space Jesus has done like the PlayStation Theater in New York and like some other big venues. But you can tell when you go and see these people that they're just so passionate about what they're doing, and they're not doing it for any other reason, like other than they just love it. And I think that people really connect with that stuff too. So it's probably again like the same with the podcast thing versus writing music. Like if people can just tell that you're really passionate about running a podcast, I think in general people will connect with it.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think about that stuff a lot too, especially writing music. I think it can be hard for anyone really to, at least I found this with myself, where I will start listening to artists for a while, and then I notice if I'm working on music, it kind of starts to emulate that sound. And it takes me like a couple weeks to sit and just look back and be like, this is like, it just feels cringy to go. And I'm like, this does like, but that's a really fine line to walk, I think, especially early on in production, because you want to learn. So you're looking at how other people are doing it, and you're trying to kind of see, okay, this genre is something that's really interesting to me. I like the sound. I'm going to kind of try and learn how to write in that genre. And it can be this really fine line between like doing exactly what you want to do, be completely unique and find this really unique sound, versus like kind of emulating some ideas. And I found for myself, that's really challenging. Like I'll kind of get super put off by my music because I feel like I'm trying to emulate other things. And I 100% agree with that. I mean, people will see like that genuine approach immediately. And I think my feeling is that's what I look for, like when I listen to music or when I listen to podcasts or whatever it is, like that genuine, whatever it is, conversation, music, whatever it is, like being, I don't know, that it's such an interesting concept to bring up, because you're right. When you see that ghost produced fake shit, honestly, it's tough. You spot it out immediately.
Sometimes it works because like I think the ghost producer who made the thing is passionate about making that ghost produced shit. And then 2, the business manager or whatever, the social media manager or whoever, like who's running the Instagram pages. Because usually these operations are like, a multi-man, like let's shoot a thing into the stars kind of operation. Mm-hmm. The social media manager is also like probably super passionate. And then the artist who's going out there and pretending that like they did everything, also super passionate. And you know what I mean? Like it's, if you have everyone on board who's really passionate about some fucking stupid project like that, then I'm sure it can still work. But yeah, no, I really do think like ingenuity. No, that means like that's good, isn't it?
Yeah, I think
disingenuousness.
Yeah.
I don't know, whatever. Yeah, disingenuousness, I think is it even a word? Hold on, let me. Whatever.
I think so.
Let's say it's a word.
Fuck it.
Yeah, disingenuousness. I think is like, yeah, it's easily spottable even if you're trying to hide it, I reckon.
Yeah. You come across it so much on Instagram. It's just the most
massively,
cringe.
Yeah. And and you'll see what happens with all of these people with those kind of audiences is they end up just copying so much hate because everyone can like tell. So everyone just starts to like fucking hate them. Or you go through their comments and it's just all bots. And it's just either
the
one.
Fire emoji, like a couple fire emojis.
Or like fist emoji, or like someone just being like, oh yeah, check my link in bio for my protein powder, and it's just like
yeah, man.
Yeah,
it's a weird world. It's a weird because there's also so many people making things, like so many people making music, so much content that it is hard to. I think to. It's funny, man, because I think to gain an audience quickly, there's a couple, like either it's like just fucking everything lines up perfectly and it's like a once in a life, and it's very, very infrequent. Like think of, I would say Rez. Like Rez put out a couple albums and just blew up, But
yeah, that's not normal, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean that in like a way though where she worked really hard on her music.
No, totally. What I'm saying is it's not like that happens very infrequently.
Exactly.
And I think what happens, like the result of it is a lot of people see that and go like, oh, I'm going to do that too. And it's like, no, you're fucking not.
Right. They're going to say, I have to blow up in 3 years or else, or like nothing, but so then you get all that cringy fake shit or like weird stuff in the middle, or you get people who have dedicated a lifetime to creating something, and over time it develops. And over time, people catch on to it, and over time, it grows into something, and it just does it. That is like this. I think a really beautiful path, because it's like commitment to, this is the thing I want to do. I want to fucking do it, and it's just going to take a really long time, maybe, but I love doing it, and this is how I'm going to approach it.
Yeah, the shame is that like a lot of people who are like that, who are like me, and just want to be in the studio making tunes, for instance, it also comes with this personality trait I've found of being like fairly introverted and fairly like just not, I'm going to post on social media every 10 seconds and I'm going to flaunt exactly what I'm doing at all times of the day kind of thing. It comes with that. So you need, like, if you're going to be that kind of person, you need a label who's going to do all that stuff for you. But also, yeah, it's just, it's tough as well, I think, for the consumer to know like what's cool and what's not with all of these other fake, or not fake, but these really aggressive like marketers out there too, because you'll get like, some person who's like, some average as fuck producer who's just so aggressive on the social media, and they're so good at it that like a lot of people will sort of sponge onto that too, And I was talking to Subtronics the other day. He's like a dubstep guy who's sort of blowing up at the moment, and he was telling me you got to have like 5 things to be massive. He's like, you got to have fucking awesome music, you got to have a really good personality that a lot of people want to connect with, you got to have really sick branding, you got to be really fucking good on social media, and then there was like a 5th thing that I don't remember, but I think he's your team. Like, you have to have a really good agent, really good manager, and stuff like that. And I agree. I think like if you have those 5 things, like you'll be really insane. The problem is that like a lot of these insanely good producers don't have a good team, or don't have a good like, you know, label, or don't have good branding, or don't have like good social media skills, or don't have a great like charismatic personality. You know, it's really rare that somebody will have all of those things.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, man, I haven't thought of it that way. I haven't heard that. That's really interesting, because yeah, I mean, if I can see that these kind of artists that will have everything going in the right direction like that will blow up quickly, especially now. Like, it's funny because it seems like, as sadly in a sense, there's as much an importance from the social media aspect, right? Instagram aspect, that there's this really crazy charismatic personality associated with the music, and then it blows up, you know? And it's just funny how there is that balance there. I mean, the music is of course super important, but for these really, I don't know, like now that I think about it, there oftentimes is this personality associated with an artist that kind of skyrockets it into something else, and it's a weird world to be living in for that reason. Yeah.
Totally. With Rez, I mean, she has obviously great music. She has a fucking amazing team, obviously. Obviously great branding. Personality-wise, I don't really see her like posting much and stuff, but she kind of like, in some ways, I think has, you know, this like space mum personality thing going on. So like, I guess like she plays off that a bunch as well.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, she kind of has all the things required to make you huge.
Maybe, sorry, I mean to cut you off. I mean, maybe part of it is like just people getting to know the producer too, because I mean, Deadmau5 is known as this kind
like
of an asshole,
yeah.
sometimes unintentionally, you know, but the realness and the rawness of that, I think, is really refreshing when he's on the pedestal with other artists who are very curated and sometimes
totally, yeah, it's refreshing to have somebody that big just be like, hey, how about you like shut the fuck up on Twitter? Which he's stopped doing. I've noticed he's like gone through a bit of a phase of not being on Twitter and trying to be like a quiet person, which is
right.
Fine. I mean, I think that's good. I think because his career almost got ended by like some transphobic comment or something like that.
I saw, that was, I think since then he hasn't been.
Yeah, he's just like, all right, it's not worth telling people they're fucking idiots. Even though they are.
Yeah. Well, yeah, today is a crazy time because depending on what you say, especially people on that, you know, in the eye of social media, it can get real crazy real quick. You say the wrong thing and everyone wants your head.
Yeah, we're going to have that after this podcast because of the Saddam Hussein free will thing.
People are not maybe going to, but yeah, but I my thing is like, I love the realness and rawness of a conversation. Like I've been listening to the Joe Rogan Experience for a long time, and the fact that there's a place people can go to talk freely about ideas, like that's what it's all about, and not all this fake canned, you know, bullshit. And I don't know.
Yeah, no, I agree. And again, I think like the reason why Joe got so big is, well, for starters, he was consistent as fuck. And he also kind of like pioneered a thing, but also just he's a natural talker. Like he's a host of TV shows and an MMA commentator, but he's also just passionate about conversation, you know, like he like really had this passion to be like, I want to dig into people's brains and like, you know, see how they really feel and like, you know, give them like these long form platform to really express their ideas and not in an interview kind of way. Like, and I think just the fact that he was so passionate and just so good at it and also so consistent, really just like culminated. And also the fact that he was doing like a new thing that no one had done yet really kind of all came together to be like this real special thing.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Cause you're totally right. I mean, he started that before anyone was podcasting, especially in this kind of free form. And it came at the perfect time when it started getting so popular, because you listen to news outlets and it's just
So boring and curated.
Right. Yeah. And there'll be a question that needs to be dissected over 30 minutes to an hour, and they have 2 to 3 minutes.
And they'll just give them like a 1 minute or 10-second voice chop or something.
Right. They don't even answer the question. Yeah. He gets more views. I heard that podcast gets more views than like CNN, Fox News.
Yeah, totally.
And it all combined. Yeah.
Yeah, it's much bigger. It's like the biggest shit ever. It's like he's so big now that like I saw him at the Belco Theater in Denver. Which holds, I think, 8,000 people or something like that, and he sold it out 4 times. Like he did 2 shows on 2 nights. So
oh my god,
that's like 32,000 tickets sold. Like to put that in perspective, Deadmau5 sold out Red Rocks 2 nights in a row, which is 9,500 tickets twice. So Deadmau5 sold about half as many tickets as Joe Rogan.
Good lord,
yeah,
it's insane.
He's
dude.
so big.
Those videos get millions and millions of downloads and plays, and it's incredible, man. And I think for a lot of people, it just came at the perfect time, because I was at a time in my life where I was trying to kind of figure shit out, and then I turned on the Joe Rogan Experience. I don't know. Do you listen to a lot of those episodes? Are you
Joe Rogan? Yeah, I listen to like so I listen to almost like I would say I listen to like maybe 1 in every 5 Joe Rogan episodes.
Okay.
Usually just like when I see he's got someone on that I think's funny or cool. But I listen to a lot of other podcasts too. Like I listen to like Sam Harris a lot. And I also listen to Your Mum's House podcast a lot with Tom Segura. Dude, he's so fucking funny.
It's the best. So, did you ever listen to the episodes with Rogan and Duncan Trussell?
Oh, dude, yeah. I listen to Duncan Trussell Family Hour too. And also have you listened to Reply All?
No, I've never heard of that.
Dude, Reply All is like, in my opinion, the fucking be all and end all of podcasts. It's so good.
Who is it?
It's just these 2 guys from this company called Gimlet, who just Gimlet's like it's kind of like a label for podcasts. So like under Gimlet, they have like 20 podcasts. Reply All is one of them, and it's just all about the internet. And like they'll find just like crazy tweets and just like dissect the tweet over like 40 minutes over like
and it's like comedy. Is that?
It's kind of like comedy, but it's also kind of like somewhere between like comedy, drama, and like just interesting, and and they do it in like such a way like it's all edited and like it's kind of like reporting as well. So like it's like journalism kind of, but they do it in like such an interesting way, and because it's about the internet, which is something I fucking spend a lot of time on, I always find it super interesting. So like for instance, when the what was like whenever some weird shit comes out on the internet, like QAnon. Do you remember QAnon?
No.
QAnon was like this thing. I think it started on 4chan or Reddit, where it was just like a bunch of people who think that like what's his name, Donald Trump is like a 10-dimensional chess player or whatever. And then like they'll like start to break down like a bunch of stuff that these people like. If you listen to the QAnon episode, like it'll explain exactly what it is, and that's what makes it interesting. Is it'll take stuff that's on the internet that's like so obscure or small or crazy or like meme-ish or just unexplainable, and they'll like explain it with like proper journalism in a podcast format.
That's awesome.
It is really sick, man. You gotta listen to it.
Yeah. I'll check it out. Have you ever listened to my favorite is Tiger Belly?
Oh, I haven't, no.
Dude, okay, so there's a long time. You probably like will follow Joe Rogan and Tom Segura on Instagram. So that's where I started, and I would see these posts come up of Bobby Lee from Mad TV?
No.
Are you familiar? Okay, so back in the 90s with this Mad TV, Bobby Lee was on Mad TV, and that's kind of his first claim to fame, which is a long, long time ago, right? And he was hilarious then, and hasn't done a ton of stuff since then. He does stand-up comedy, and he'll tour and he'll do shows and stuff, but nothing as iconic as that. That kind of put him into this crazy television realm. But I would see him, and he'd have these pictures. He's kind of this shorter Asian fellow. He's overweight, and he has the amazingly attractive girlfriend, and they just take the most ridiculous photos together, like she's holding his belly and stuff. And I'm like, what is this? And it took me like 2 years. I look at him, I'm like, what's going on? And I wouldn't make anything of it. And then maybe 3 months ago, I was like, it just came up on YouTube. I started watching. It is the funniest fucking show, dude. It's interview based, but he's hilarious. And he'll have a lot of music producers on, like he had, or artists too. Like he had the lead singer of Interpol on, which I've never been a huge Interpol fan, but it was really interesting to listen to. And it's just, you got to watch it, man. It's fucking hilarious. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, fuck yeah. Yeah, I'll check it out. Yeah, so a lot of like the Reply All one, it's not really that conversation based. It's more like and that's kind of why I like it, because it's like a different format than I'm sort of used to for podcasts. I really like the Your Mum's House one because they always just have like the dumbest videos and stuff that like people send into them.
Yeah, and Tom Segura is so funny.
He is, yeah. He's got like really good dry humor or whatever.
Yeah, dude. There's that. Once I've just been a fan of podcasting for so long, and I would listen. There's a time when I was living in Tucson, Arizona. I drive up to Phoenix to see my girlfriend because we were dating long distance for a while. And that's what I do. I just listen to Your Mom's House. I listen to Rogan. I listen to Duncan. And it's crazy. It's all free. It's all so fucking good. It's all free.
Yeah, but I mean, they get paid in other ways, like selling out fucking 32,000 tickets. Or,
right. Or fucking
like all the what do you call it? The like at the start of the episodes mattress, where they say like, hey, these are our sponsors or whatever.
Yeah, those mattress ads that Tom Segura always does.
Yeah, they'd be getting paid pretty well for that, I think, and also just like obviously to be able to have a platform where at the start of it you can be like, hey, I'm doing a show here this weekend, and then it instantly sells out.
Oh yeah,
like that's got to be pretty fucking impressive.
Yeah, because they have hundreds of thousands of views on those episodes.
Tons, yeah.
Crazy. Yeah.
It's definitely another really huge podcast. For good reason. But yeah, Duncan Trussell's ones are great to listen to because he's just I don't know, he's so he's just like so into like psychedelic drugs and into like the fabric of being a human, like speaking about that. And
and how he puts it is he's pure genius. I think on a totally different realm, just like that media or medium is perfect for him. And if there wasn't podcasting, he may not have been able to even kind of hit that stride or have this platform to do what he does. But those introductions can be gold, like pure fucking gold.
Totally, yeah. He's such a creative talker. But yeah, I think totally. Again, I think some people never find their thing, that they should be doing. And I think I'm lucky to have found what I think has been my thing, which is just sitting in my room and doing some YouTube tutorials every now and then and making tunes and stuff like that. But yeah, somebody like a stand-up comedian especially, it's like, what the fuck are they going to do on their weeks off, sit around and talk. Or like, I mean, all of the stand-up comedians should be doing is sitting around and thinking of jokes. Like as a producer should be sitting around producing tunes, right?
Right. Yeah, it is funny. I think that lifestyle is crazy because they'll sleep in, at least the guys who want to or girls who want to, they'll sleep because they don't perform until late at night. So they'll sleep in. Then all their responsibility is to go, if they're, say, working the Comedy Store or something, that's their only responsibility is to go tell jokes at fucking 10 p.m. Like, that's awesome, man. That's a life, dude.
The cool thing about being a comedian, I think, at that level is you can do like multiple shows in the same night at the same club, or like a few nights in a row. So for instance, Christina Przitsky did Comedy Works in Denver, and she did Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and I think maybe even Sunday, and she was doing like two shows a night basically.
Right.
And it was like I think 300 something tickets, so definitely like nothing like Joe Rogan or something, but she definitely sold like a few thousand tickets, I think, over all the shows. But it's cool because she would have just been like during the day in Denver, just having days off in Denver, just chilling,
just hanging out.
Yeah, which is cool. Like, I mean, you can kind of do that as an electronic musician, but not really. It's a lot of like in and out, like flights and shit like that.
Yeah, I just by hearing stories like from those guys, I would imagine it'd have to be so cool, man. And I love hearing those stories too, because a lot of those guys they'll start out and they have nothing, man. They're like living out of cars in comedy, and there's like, this is what I want to do. And that's when those stories are so amazing because they can look back and they have a lot later on in life, just by committing completely to what they wanted to do, and they get to still do that thing, That's
yeah,
amazing.
I mean, it's got to take some like mental resilience and stuff to be like, fuck, I got no money and I'm still just going to do this thing that I'm passionate about.
Yeah.
I was lucky,
Yeah,
man.
dude.
I was so lucky in the way that like I did it because my parents were just like, you can just do whatever you want. And I was like, sweet.
Dude.
So I just like, I literally lived with them until I was like 26 and I'm 31 now. So I've only been out of home for like 5 years or something.
That's sick, man. We kind of have a similar story in that sense because I lived at home for a while. Like I went back to school, moved in. There's a time when I was just drinking and smoking and fucking around for a long time. And then I said, I'm going to kind of get my shit together, moved home, went to school. So I was living with my parents. I moved back in and I think I was there until like something like that, like 26, 27. Yeah.
Yeah. Which is, I mean, yeah, it's awesome to have like a base like that where you have some stability and people who like care about you, who just want you to do well and stuff. But yeah, I mean, it's crazy to think about that. I've only been out of home for 5 years and 4 of them have been in America.
Yeah, dude. And just to, I just have that process where I as I read, like you were working on music while you're living at home, you completely dedicated everything to it. Then suddenly you're picking up shows, you're putting out music. Like it was just kind of seamless. Like it just, you put in the time. I know you worked crazy hard.
Yeah.
But it just kind of clicked. Like things just.
Yeah. I mean, I think that'll always happen. Like I was talking to my friend Gardner earlier. I can join him to this call if you want. Are we good? Should I add him?
Yeah, add him, dude. 100%.
All right, hold on. Add friends to DM.
Dude, we just knocked out a fucking hour too, so we could even cut it into 2 if we want, or we'll figure it out. I mean.
Oh, shit. Hold on. All right, here we go.
Yo.
Yeah, what's up? Hey,
what up?
Gardner. He'll jump in.
Okay.
He said he's going to jump in a sec.
Hey, this is Gardner.
Hey, what's up, dude? Hey, so this is Dalton. He's doing this podcast called what's it called? Creativity something.
Chasing Creativity.
Yeah. So we've already been chatting for like an hour. We've covered like lots of ground, but we got to this point where we were talking about like stand-up comedians and stuff, and how they were sort of like living out of their cars and all that stuff, and how they just kind of like continued to do something that they were passionate about, and now they have all these crazy big podcasts like Your Mum's House and like Duncan Trussell's Family Hour and Joe Rogan obviously has a huge one, and I guess like we're getting to the point of like it's crazy how if you just do something that you're super passionate about, that people somehow like have this natural indicator to just like latch onto it because they can tell you're passionate about it, versus like doing something that you're not maybe fully engaged in or something like that. And I was like, oh, that's interesting because I was just talking to you about that earlier.
We were just talking about this.
Yeah.
Oh my
God,
God,
dude! Nice to meet you.
Hey, likewise, Dalton. Did you just follow me on Instagram? Because I think I saw you on Julian Gray's channel too. Am I wrong?
Yeah. I think after I watched your interview with Bill, I followed you.
Yeah. I saw your name. I saw your name on both topics, man. How you doing?
What's up, man? Nice to meet you.
Literally, like less than 24 hours here I am talking to you. That is so crazy. Yeah,
it's a weird small world, man.
Bill and I were just talking about this, and I think it has something to do with zeal, which is an interesting phenomenon. That's like the the force that you exude when you talk about something you're passionate about. Like people can see the zeal in your argument. You know what I'm saying? Like, and then that's where the term zealot comes from, right?
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think when people are being zealots, that's a bad thing. But I think when you're exuding a bit of zeal about a topic, you have to be careful when you watch that, because maybe you're passionate about it, maybe you're knowledgeable about it, maybe you're qualified, but maybe you're just a zealot. So how weird is that? Like, I think Joe Rogan kind of falls into those categories of things where, he's talking about something and I'm like, is this real, or is he just being a zealot about this? You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's a weird like fine line you can walk between just going too far in one direction, being like very committed to a passion, like something you're passionate about, and that's kind of exuding, versus like crossing over and becoming this zealot, and then it gets a little tricky.
like versus facts. Like I used to be a really hardcore vegetarian. I'm not gonna lie. I've said a couple of things about being a vegetarian that might not be the truth, just to get people to like be vegetarians. Like maybe that was just me being a zealot about being a vegetarian or something.
Right. But you're saying that like it's you think it's possible to like exude this zeal in a positive way, like through music or creativity or stand-up comedy or something that people can latch onto in like a good way.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean that's where the church came from.
Dude, yeah. Fuck yeah. Those guys are like, fuck dude, preachers are like insanely good public speakers.
That's where I get my public speaking from. My dad's a priest.
Oh fuck.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't just come by it naturally, you know. Like I just watched my dad speak in public for years and years, and I was like, oh, okay, that's how you talk to people.
That's so crazy. Fuck yeah, I can't imagine that. Yeah, so
Gary's
Dalton,
a good guy though. He's not one of those preachers that like fucks kids or anything. Like he's a good dude. So
Gardner is he lives in Atlanta, but he was from North Carolina. But he's also a YouTuber, and he did this series a couple of years ago called 365, and it was basically he put out a video and a piece of music every day, which is fucking crazy, like to produce a video and a piece of music every day. But what I kept telling him, I can't even remember. You brought this up to me earlier, Gardner. I didn't even remember saying it, but what did I say? I said something about like I can't remember. But you were basically like from doing something every day, it wasn't like necessarily doing you any good or something apart from like getting a ton of practice.
That's the truth. It wasn't necessarily building like an audience around my music. It was building an audience around like YouTube and video. But what it was for me was like this practice, and I had 365 chances to make a song, with the clear goal being make a complete song by the end of the day, right?
Yeah.
So Bill and I were talking about exactly this topic earlier, and he said, Bruce Lee is credited with the quote of I don't fear the man who's practiced 1,000 kicks. I fear the man who's practiced one kick 1,000 times.
Yeah.
So the idea was I practiced finishing a song 365 times in a row.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't necessarily good for songwriting or sound design, but it was really good for here's how a song is made. Does that make sense?
Here's how to get to the end of it. Yeah. And another thing I think that was healthy for is getting to quality through quantity. I think that's like another thing that I did as well, is like a lot of people who are young, I think they are always like, oh man, I've got like 500 whips. And it's like, well, that's fine. Like you're just doing a lot of quantity right now. You're not really, don't even worry about making an album right now. You're just practicing, in my opinion.
Yeah, exactly. If I had not released all of those tunes, I could have, and I made one album called The Best of 365, and that's literally what an album should be. Like the best of your, the best 12 tracks you've written in a year is kind of what an album should turn out to be, or more.
Right.
I've got an album I'm working on. I've been working on it for 2 years. Like that's how it should be. And it took me a second to realize that after finishing the series.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. Did you find that over time? So doing that every day would be so interesting. Like you can probably look back and see how you've progressed over time. Though, like, seeing it now? Do you think it was like very beneficial to approach it that way? Like you had this regimented approach where you're like, okay, I got to finish the song every day. So over time, you just found that your production quality increased, sound design increased over time, or was it almost, were there kind of hindrances because you were kind of keeping to this format where you couldn't expand outside that and maybe give an idea a few days of work, something like that?
Both. And so it was bad for me because of the way it falsely inflated my ego, thinking that a completed song is a good song.
Mm-hmm.
And it was also good for me in the sense that I stated earlier, where it was like good practice. And it kind of got in the way of making music as a thing to be enjoyed, because like it started to turn into a chore, like a daily chore, like going for a run or something.
Which is like exactly how to not exude zeal through music.
Yeah.
But yeah, it got in the way, and I'm so glad Bill's here to talk about it too, because like he kind of like met me during that time where I was coming off of 365 and like, why aren't these tunes taking off? And the answer is like, man, you spent a day on them. That's why. Like, stop trying to think you're bigger than a day's worth of work,
Totally.
Yeah.
And the other thing as well is what we were talking about after that led into like some other thing, like how a lot of people, they kind of they'll look at like dubstep producers or whatever, like Skrillex or whatever, and they'll try and discount it because of how simple it is and how flawless and effortless somebody like Skrillex makes writing his music look, and how simple it is. And a lot of people, or like, Virtual Riot or something like that. But again, it comes back to that Bruce Lee thing. It's like these guys have just practiced one kick 1,000 times, and they're so fucking flawless at it that like you can't really discount like how good those people are at what they do.
Exactly. If you're getting in a ring with a guy who's got a kick that nobody can figure out, that guy's not going to do a different kick. Like,
yeah, totally.
he's got the kick that trumps yours, and like he knows how to do it better than you do.
Yeah. It's interesting. I remember listening to your guys' conversation. You had a bit on that where you were talking about working on something very quickly, like trying to start an idea and then finish it, not maybe keeping within the parameter of a day, but just trying to get it done within a timely manner so it's not taking like 2 months. And when I started to think about that with my own production, it makes sense, because if you sit on something and you like reevaluate it, and then you give it some time, it's sitting on a back burner, and then you reopen it, and then you work, whatever, you're going to be a different person by the time you're working on it 2 months later.
But I think there's value to that, because I think like when you make something in a day, it takes a fucking tiny snapshot of who you are. Whereas if you work on something for like a year, it's like a panoramic shot of your emotions over like a year, which I think is more powerful.
Right. Yeah.
I also seen a G Jones tweet the other day. He was like, I'll write a track in 4 hours and finish it over a year, which is totally how I am as well.
That's sick. Yeah.
But I think that's clever, because it's like over a year, you'll pull out all of the things that you can't live with for your whole life. But you'll also add in a bunch of things to accentuate what's going on in the tune that need to be there to pack up the idea that you've found to be important over that year. Like, what makes that tune kind of thing.
Right.
Or like what makes that tune special in your opinion?
For me, it's a bit more even exaggerated, because like I wrote a tune a year ago on a completely different setup, meaning like my speakers were different, my room was different. Like I literally reconstructed my room from the ground up, and like so it doesn't even sound the same. Yeah. So like I can have an idea where it's like, okay, this idea is solid regardless of the room, and then once I improve the room, the tune gets better. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. I do that as well. Like I'll start a lot of stuff in headphones, and then I'll work at it on it at like a friend's house, and then like I'll work on it in my in-ears on a plane, and then I'll work on it in my studio. Like I'll work on shit like on a bunch of speakers too. So it's the same thing. It's like you get like this giant snapshot of like systems as well that you're working on.
Yeah, and I had this tune in Bill's room like maybe 6 or 7 months ago, and I was like, all right, this is a dope tune, and I showed it to him, and I heard it, and I was like, okay, there's a pocket at fucking 60, and I took it back to my house, and I fucking increased that volume, and now it's a better tune.
Yeah.
Like sometimes I don't hear things that
we were talking about that earlier too, like how a lot of the wow factor of electronic music is just how fucking good it sounds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can get things so much cleaner than you can just recording, like, as I call it, organic music, just because you have DSP on your side. I mean, the idea is to push it to its max.
You don't only have DSP on your side, but you have compositional perfection on your side too.
Yeah, exactly. Like I can get, Serum to do anything 100% correctly that I can't get a cello to do.
Yeah. It is. It's so cool because it's just opened up this crazy box. And like when I started playing music, I was just writing guitar with my friends, and you're so stuck to one instrument, and you can kind of have ideas, but for myself, I was stuck by the limitations of what I could do with my hand. And then I couldn't throw it in a DAW and piece it apart. But now if you work in Ableton, you can listen to something over and over and over again to kind of piece it apart in your mind and say, like, what's missing or where do I want to take it? And then you have full range of whatever you can come up with in your mind to throw out in Ableton. It's amazing.
Which can also be dangerous, though. I think another important thing is creative limitation. Like, I think the fact that you can do anything with Ableton, like, gives a lot of people option paralysis.
Yeah.
Where they're just kind of like,
I have a couple of students that are just like that. They get to a point where they can't decide between one or the other knob settings. And I'm like, guys,
just pick one. Like, fucking move on.
Which one sounds better? Print it down to audio and then mess with that, and then know it's no longer a problem.
Yeah. That's one thing that Culprit said. He was like, I really love the glue compressor in Ableton because you just have to pick a setting because there's only like 5 options on each knob kind of thing. Apart from like obviously the threshold and the output and the range, but the attack and the release settings can only be in like 5 positions or something. So it's like you just have to pick one of 5 positions. It's not that many combos. Whereas with a regular compressor, it's like, fuck, you can tweak that shit for days.
Yep.
And I'm sure with newer producers that you guys work with, part of it too is like when you start out and you're like, I'm going to put out a 3-track EP, in people's mind at that stage, everything has to be perfect in those 3 tracks. Those 3 tracks are going to represent who you are as an artist. Versus when you have 100 tracks out, you can kind of rely a little bit on like, hey, I have this crazy discography behind me that represents who I am as an artist. This one track is just what I want to do today, and it's going to fit within, the 100 other tracks I have. It takes the pressure off a little bit. And
kind of, but that can also like come with some other anxieties of like, there's so much defining me at this point. Like, should I start a new project?
Right. Like, can I change my sound?
Yeah, like maybe
I've tried different ideas. Yeah.
Yeah, like maybe
I think an EP is a little bit easier to write than an album.
Oh, totally. My thing at this point is like, because I've overshared so much for so long in the way of like not only tutorials but also music. At this point, I think people almost just be like, oh yeah, that's just Bill. He's going to do another album in like a week. Don't worry, it'll be fine. That like it's almost like fucked the branding up, and I haven't starved people enough. So like through my head goes, should I start a new project a lot?
Dude, same, because I kind of got my YouTube following from the meme scene. So like I feel like sometimes like I'll put out like a serious vid and people are like, oh yeah, it's just Gardner being serious. He'll be back to being funny Gardner in 2
But
vids.
That's not true, because remember the other day you did that the Ableton video, which was just about a trick that you found, and it did way better than like a lot of your videos. And I remember what I said to you was like, I think the reason why that one did so much better is because it wasn't about you. It was about something like just a trick, which makes it about the person who's watching the video, because then they're instantly like, how can I apply this to my life and my workflow and stuff?
That's true. Can we also talk about how I've gotten way more views after I took my face out of the videos? Am I just an ugly motherfucker or what? Like I don't understand.
Yeah, and you would always like play it up to and be like, oh yeah, I got a fucking long ass head.
I do, like people started watching my videos in mass, like way more after I took my face out of it. Like I just started using this avatar that my buddy drew, which is it's frankly, I don't know, it's more appealing than my actual face.
That's like, so funny.
Yeah, dude, it's a real thing, man.
That's lit. Well, it's when it's cool. Well, it's interesting you mentioned that with the meme part. Like you've become known for something. So when you try and do anything else, people are like, I mean, fuck this. Like I am at the stage where I'm just kind of starting this podcast, but I started out as a producer, and this thing was kind of on the side. But it's the weights are shifting where I'm paying way more attention to this and putting way more time into this. But people are becoming are going to start knowing me as this podcast guy. And anytime I put out music, it's going to be like, oh, yeah.
The podcast guy's doing music again.
Right, he's trying to do music. Yeah.
Don't worry, he'll be back to doing podcasts.
Right. So
yeah, there is like some anxiety of like pigeonholing yourself in certain ways too, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, do you enjoy podcasting?
I love it, man. I really do, and it's been very interesting because when I started, so I was working the 9 to 5, I still am, but outside work, I started playing music again, which was like really my first love in life. And I got rid of it for some time and did other bullshit. But anyway, so I started making music outside work again, and I'm enjoying it, but really just kind of for myself. And then when I started doing the podcast, I found it's like really fulfilling for me to have these conversations. And I feel like I'm doing something that like I enjoy producing. I feel like brings me a lot of fulfillment. I feel like I'm doing something important, as fucking stupid as that sounds. Like I feel like I'm creating something that I feel has like more meaning than what I could do with music, I guess. So the music has kind of become something just more for myself. And I don't know. So I love doing it. And it's, I always kind of now have to preface from like, yeah, I make music too on podcasts. I feel like, cause I don't know. I don't know. I guess I'm pigeonholing myself. I don't know, but whatever.
Yeah, but like we were talking about before, like about what constitutes a good life and stuff. If you would be happy at the end of your life to have just had a bunch of really fulfilling conversations, then I don't see a problem with that.
Yeah, I agree. It's finding whatever that thing is that you look back and say, man, I'm really glad I did this thing. And there's a lot of times where it's funny because I mean, I'm sure you guys both would agree with this. There's in anything that brings a lot of fulfillment, there's a lot of times where it fucking sucks, too. Like I don't like doing podcast edits. They suck. But
well, a perfect example of that is exercise. It's like something that makes you feel really good also fucking sucks.
Right. Yeah. But, having this conversation, like, Bill, I've known your music for a long time and now we're fucking talking about music. That's crazy for me. So like, yeah, it's so these are the times where I'm like, okay, I fucking love doing this thing. And when people reach out and they're like, hey, I like this podcast. This is really cool. For whatever reason, that gives me a lot more feedback than if someone's like, oh, that track, it's really cool. I like it. I don't know.
So,
cool.
but let's play this on its head.
Yeah.
If I just met you, right,
Yeah.
in a bar or something, and I gave you recognition for your music as opposed to recognition for your podcast, which
Right.
one of those would feel better?
I think the podcast. I'm certain of it. Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
I talk about it to my girlfriend because people would, and I only have on spot, I have 2 fucking tracks out. I have a lot of music that I haven't released and I have something coming out next month, so there's not a lot of music, but when someone will write me and say, hey, I really like your music, that'll give me like let's just say like a 6, but the podcast would be like a 9. So.
You know why I reckon that might be, and I feel like I might feel the same way if I had a podcast. It's because I think a podcast is like a direct representation of your personality and who you are, whereas music is like a very abstract representation of who you are, and it's also
I made a music earlier.
Dude, I made a music earlier too. Yeah, I think it's like when somebody comes up to me and says like, "Dude, I love your music. You're such a genius." It's like, nah, bro, you don't know me. Like I'm not a genius. Like I'm just a fucking idiot who like spent way too long in Ableton. And when somebody I think would come up, say like I'm saying hypothetically, if I had a podcast, if somebody came up and said, dude, I love listening to your conversations, I think I would like that more too, because I'd be like, oh, cool, yeah, thanks. That like actually means that you connect with my personality in cool ways. But I guess I kind of get that sometimes when people come up and say like, I love your tutorials, but often what I take from that is not you love my personality, it's you just love information about Ableton, which is fine. Everybody, I think, who wants to make music loves new information about music.
Well, I think it's like Amazon, Bill. Like people don't love Amazon for the fact that it's Amazon. They love Amazon for the delivery. Maybe they like your tutorials because of your delivery. Your personality is inherent in those.
It's just I give you that 2-day shipping on the fucking information.
Yeah, you basically do, man. You're like, hey, here's like way more information than you need, and it's in 10 minutes. Fucking sit down.
Yeah.
Do you like Ableton? Do you like drinking through a fire hose? I got you.
Buckle up, motherfucker.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, so I feel you on that. Like if someone's like praising your personality via praising your podcast, that could be definitely like more rewarding, I think. Right.
Yeah, and so I've also just felt like when I'm working on music too, I always have this I always feel like I'm just trying to emulate too much other shit. I never feel like I'm being really, really unique and real and like producing something that's new and could give some like could allow someone to feel a certain way that I think would create importance. I just feel like I don't have that. Like, so when I see someone who's doing something really, really genius and unique with music, I feel like that's super important and they need to be doing that. But for whatever reason, I think if I dedicated my life to music, it would be kind of, I don't know, derivative of shit, and then it wouldn't mean a lot because of that. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I also think that music has no intrinsic meaning. Anyway, I think that's all within the listener, because and I think the proof is in the pudding. When I can listen to a piece of music and then I can show my friend that same piece of music and they can just be like, meh,
Right.
Whereas I can be this has a crazy emotional thing to me.
Right.
And it can be based on a lot of reasons unbeknownst to me, like, maybe some nostalgic fact because it sounds similar to some shit that used to be on TV in Australia or something. I have no idea.
I took a huge left turn recently. This is related to can you take a left turn and have your fans follow? And similarly, worrying about is this some sort of groundbreaking shit? I found that in the songs where I was worried about that the least, right? When I was just creating something, right? When I was totally involved in the creative process of, okay, let's make more cool shit happen. That is the most appealing thing, I think.
Yeah.
To people. And that comes
100%.
back to zeal. You can hear someone's zeal when they totally devote themselves to the creative process.
Yeah. I absolutely agree. Yeah.
That's the attractive thing in music that really draws me into artists, where I'm like, okay, I can hear this dude is fucking putting in, or dude or chick, excuse me, it's 2019. Where it's I can hear this person is putting their entire dick into something. I'm like, dude.
Or you can just tell that they're just having crazy amounts of fun. If you listen to Opio's music or something, you're like, he's just such a legitimately lighthearted guy. Anyway, and I think that shines through his music perfectly. When you listen to it, you're like, oh fuck yeah, it just sounds like a guy who likes to have fun and doesn't like to have any negative vibes.
Right. Exactly. You can hear somebody going ham in the studio. When I listen to Net Sky, I get that on some tracks. So I'm like, this dude's just fucking slamming the keyboard. It sounds great. I'm in. Let's go.
Hey Dalton, can we just talk about the time that I took Gardner to a show that I was playing with Black Gummy?
Uh-huh.
And he was
I know this story.
He was so baked, and he looked at me and he's like, what did you say? He's like, bro, we're getting really great turnarounds on these drops right now. I was like, what does that even mean?
Dude, it has a real meaning, okay? The turnaround is the end of a 16-bar phrase, right? And you're like, all right, at the end of every 16-bar phrase, you're supposed to have something that brings you back into it,
Yeah.
You do it too, Billy. You just don't know you do it. In electricato stuff, it's boom, boom, and then you get back around to a 16-bar phrase. It's it repeats.
But for some reason, when you said it, I was just it just reminds me of some guy just being like, I need these turned around on my office desk by Monday.
I was really baked, though. I'll give you that.
God, I haven't. So it's weird for me. My girlfriend smokes a lot. I'll smoke periodically, but I won't get high like I used to get high when I was 18. I don't know what it was, but I used to there would be those times where I don't know, and I don't even know why it is. I feel like I've capped myself. Or I have some sort of governor on how I can experience getting high now.
Well, I mean, me neither. But I was in Denver, and they have some awesome edibles, and I was given some by a connoisseur of edibles. and you know what I'm saying? When you're handed gold from somebody who knows gold, you're like, all right, cool. And and I was extremely baked. And there you go.
I got way too high before Lutrell. He was here 2 months ago, and that wasn't even the fun kind of baked where it was just, it went from my whatever governor I have inherently to near neurosis, about to just lose my mind. And it only happens when I have edibles. It was 5 milligrams, and there's been times where I will smoke, and I will smoke a lot, and I'll never get anywhere near to where I was with this, but I just went into a different universe. And I had to, with my girlfriend, we left after 40 minutes into 30 minutes into a set, had to get an Uber. Yeah. And then I found myself, I jumped out of bed. I was almost asleep, jumped out of bed. I'm rummaging through clothes. I don't know why. And I'm like, oh, this is like what a crazy person feels like. Like I thought I was like on the border. I was like, I might just stay crazy for the rest of my life.
You know what happens to me like every time I smoke?
Wait, what? No.
Let's go with Bill's story first.
Yeah. So what happens to me literally every time I smoke? Like one of a few things happens, and it's always incredible amounts of physical anxiety. Usually my brain is fine. I'm like, this feels fucking awesome, like mentally. But I always am like, my heart feels like it's about to stop.
Yeah.
My ribs feel like they're falling apart. I feel like I have a hole in my chest. I feel like my hip is dislocated. Like I literally get the weirdest physical anxiety to the point where I'm like, I know this is just weird because it's happened so many times. And I know I was fine 10 minutes ago, and I haven't done anything like physically exerting. I've just smoked a couple of hits of a joint, and now my hip feels dislocated. It's like, that's not a thing. So like I can logic myself out of it, but it's so uncomfortable, man.
That literally never happens to me. I can
fucking
even go from
good
being
for
like,
you, bro.
10 on the mad scale. I can go from being like a 10 on like the pissed off scale down to like a 3. And I'm like, you know what?
Oh man, I wish that was the case for me. Like I have that with beer. Like if I'm like fucking pissed off, I'll have like 2 really nice like hoppy ass IPAs, and I'll be like, oh, I'm fine. Fuck everything. It's not that important.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Same.
it's an exchange. I go to being like more obsessed about it.
Yeah.
Being cool to being like, fucking can't believe that happened. And Caroline's like, you had 2 beers. What's wrong with you? I'm like, dude, just fucking replace the beers with weed, please.
Yeah, dude. Yeah.
I can neither. I can write on neither. I never drink when I write. I never smoke when I write.
Yeah, well, what is it? I think it's Dennis DeSantis says, write drunk. No, yeah, write drunk, edit sober. And then another friend of mine recently told me that he does all these mix downs on mushrooms because he can really tell if the mix is like stabbing him in the face or giving him a warm hug if he's on mushrooms. So
that's awesome.
So the new saying for me goes, write drunk, edit sober, mix on mushrooms.
Dude, I do it all sober. I just can't take it.
I agree. I do my best work sober as well.
I'll like there'll be times where I will have a drum section where I couldn't really quite figure out. Like I was trying to have like this really crazy drum section with like a lot of Foley in it, kind of like Andrew Holm of This Never Happened, if you're like familiar with his music, like a lot of stuff going on in a drum track, and I couldn't do it while I was sober, but then I smoked, and it was almost more of like an editing process. But I was just like, I feel like I was tuned into every piece that I brought into that little drum section that I could kind of pull. And then when I listened to it later, like I made some edits, I was like, I kind of like this. So,
yeah, I feel that. Yeah, I've done some things like when I was drunk before, where the next day I've been like, I would never make that sober, but it's like so simple and so like it's just dumb. Like I've slapped distortions on everything and like run everything through like so much limiting, and like I'll get sober again and be like, why did I do that? And then but I'll listen to it and be like, it's actually kind of cool. And then I'll sort of like learn from it and then like reel it back a little bit to be like, all right, drunk Bill, that's like a little too much. Like, let's just bring it back a tiny bit. And then like somewhere in between drunk Bill and sober Bill is interesting, I think.
I've definitely edited a couple of videos as Drunk Gardener, and they've turned out pretty good.
Yeah. Video editing is a whole other thing. Like you guys are both into it. I can't get into it.
My editing it's not even really editing. It's just like laying audio on but they're such long videos that like I'll do an intro, I'll lay audio on top of it, and then the exporting process and uploading to YouTube, it ends up taking a long time, but it's not very like technical edits.
I have like 2 quick questions actually.
Yeah.
First of all, do you use DaVinci?
No, I use After Effects.
All right. Okay. Interesting. And my second question
edit
is
video in After Effects?
Yeah, I pull everything. So what I do is I'll get like the
how do you edit video in After Effects?
Well, okay, so I could be doing this totally wrong, but I will pull in the because like when I open After Effects, right? I pull in the videos, I pull in the audio, and I'm just layering the video with the good quality audio, and then I'll do like a little intro section where it's like an image pulling up onto the screen. There's a track from like a fan submission, and then there's like text on it, and then it fades into the interview. So it's not doing like anything really intense in After Effects. But now that you mention that, I wonder if like, because I'll export in like whatever the After Effects media encoder or whatever, and that takes like 2 hours, and I have a pretty good computer for an hour video.
Yeah, you should check DaVinci.
Dude, editing video in After Effects is like making a song in fucking the Virus TI plugin. Like, dude, you're not supposed to edit in After Effects.
I had no idea.
Dude, listen. If you're familiar with it,
in the Adobe suite, which is the one to? Is it
Premiere?
I see. I got all this shit illegally, but I can grab Premiere.
No,
but that's
don't. If you're not familiar with Premiere, just go over to DaVinci.
Yeah, it's
DaVinci's
like it's also free.
Yes,
which is
awesome. 100% free,
dude.
Yeah.
So will those exports be a lot less than 2 hours?
Oh my god, you poor thing. So the reason After Effects takes so long is because it's used for animation, which is .avi format, which is full quality. Like
right. That makes sense. Okay, yeah. So for the simple shit I want to do, I can have it done way faster.
Oh my god, you can render an H.264. Like, you could probably do that in a minute and a half.
Oh my god, dude! I feel like such a I mean, I'm all like trial by error. I'm like, oh, this works. So I'm like, interesting. It seems like After Effects is the way to do it. Like, I never thought I just thought it's what you use. I don't know.
I do not want this to sound like I'm shitting on you, but
no, that's okay.
It's
okay.
Hey, so my other question that I had was, have you been like hit up by any sponsors yet for the podcast?
No. Well,
I wonder when they come. Like,
there's like one guy who's just kind of really. It's there's like smaller guys that are kind of doing some like businesses, quote unquote, around electronic music stuff, like doing plug-in packs and stuff that are like, oh, we want to work together, but not officially. And I was kind of like, meh.
Yeah, I wonder at what point you start getting hit up from those kind of people. I started getting hit up pretty much last year, like consistently for YouTube stuff, like just from plugin companies wanting to give me their plugins and stuff. And I think like partially it was not only the YouTube stuff, but it was also a little bit to do with like streaming on Twitch as well, because I stream like pretty consistently too.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude, DaVinci. I remember like when Gardner, so sometimes I'll get Gardner to come on the road with me and we'll make like those tour vlogs. And I remember the first few times he came on the road with me and he was using Premiere and I was like, bro, why don't you use DaVinci? And he kind of got angry. He was like, no, man, Premiere. And now he's like all about DaVinci.
Hold on. It is the industry standard. I was right about that. It still is the industry standard, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But DaVinci is quickly taking over that market.
Yeah.
I feel like a fucking idiot.
It took Bill's dude who's like excellent with film named Bo to get me to like switch.
I know Black Magic. Yeah.
Dude,
yeah.
Gardner knows Black Magic as well.
Yeah,
The camera
I don't want to talk about it, but like I love Resolve. I don't like their fucking hardware.
Yeah. He bought a camera and it was just the worst.
Super high end.
Yeah, but he had a terrible experience.
Oh,
it was
really?
Great. It was great for like 6 months, and I filmed like 2 or 3 really great videos with it. Great dynamic range, and then it just started to fuck up, and they were like, "Yeah, it's not our fault." And I'm like, "You made it though."
Yeah, this is like the perfect kind of platform, honestly, to tell that story though, because like, it's how you get some retribution.
Dude, I went from being a video nerd, like gear acquisition syndrome, 100%, to like just not caring about it anymore because of my experience with Black Magic Design. So here's the long and short of it. If you'd like, are we down for this? Is everybody down for this? Right.
Yeah.
All right. So I bought this camera, and a Black Magic camera isn't cheap. They make several models. I bought their prosumer model. It was the Black Magic Design Ursa 4K. Great camera. And I've played with a few that work really well. And I also did my research and went to this camera house in Atlanta called Showcase and tried one out. I loved it. I was like, this is great. It's got great dynamic range. It uses all my lenses I already have. It's going to be fantastic. So I purchased one from what was the name of the place? I forgot it. I blocked that out of my memory. It's this shitty camera store in New Jersey. I hope they get hit by a bus. Yeah, it was terrible. So I get the camera from them, and it works great for a few months. I take it. I brought it to Denver. I filmed a couple of videos with Bill. They look great. I mean, you can view them on Vimeo for full quality. But long story short, it started to act weird. Like normally when you view a digital camera's viewfinder, you see either a flat image, meaning that you see a consistent color, or you have banding. And that happens when you jack up an ISO to like the nth degree and you're in a very dark room. You can start to see banding. That's just inherent in any sort of digital sensor as opposed to analog, because the computer's trying to make sense out of the black, right? Mm-hmm. Because black at a certain degree to our eyes has different shades of black, right? But to a digital sensor, it's all ones and zeros. And so it's the same with audio. Like the depth of the amount of information the microphone's able to pull in is the same as the depth of the information the sensor is able to pull in. Well, this one was supposedly able to pull in 16 stops of black, and it started to flicker. Like you could see these little. That's the best audio I can give, like what was happening with the video. And so I sent it back to Adorama. That's the name of the company. Adorama Cameras in New Jersey. Listen to me. If you all ever send me another spam email, I'm going to file a lawsuit. You guys suck. Fuck you guys. Adorama said, not our problem. Da Vinci's problem. So I called up Da Vinci, and they were really helpful at first. Sent the camera back all the way to Black Magic Design in California. They opened the box, sent it back to me. Nothing has changed. And then I was like, what happened? And they said, oh, the serial number's been scratched off. I was like, what? So they were trying to launder serial numbers somehow with cameras. I don't know if it's like official, but yeah. And I got the camera back, and it was like fucking $45 for shipping to California. It gets back to me. The motherfuckers haven't touched nothing. They've addressed nothing. I don't want to go on, man. It goes on for like 3 more months of just I called my dad. I was like, Gary, listen.
Gary.
Like, I was distressed. Like shit wasn't right in my life. These motherfuckers caused me so much distress. So I was finally like, you know what? My Canon 70D is fine. I don't care.
So
I just sold it.
You still have this camera or no?
No, it's gone. I sold it. I was like, fuck you guys. Sold it.
Did you get any good turnarounds on it?
No. I got no good turnarounds, Bill.
Damn.
I got no good turnarounds. It was a waste of money. Waste of my life.
Wait, so where was the serial? Was that at the camera store? They were trying to somehow.
Yeah, Adorama. They were trying to launder serial numbers.
Dude, that's fucking crazy.
Yeah, the idea is that they can send you a device and you can't prove that you had a certain serial number, but you send it back to them and they can deny that it's not on the camera.
Or they can just send you a different camera or something with no serial number on it also.
One day I called them fucking Inception level 3000. And I was like, listen, you guys can't prove that you sent me a camera with a serial number.
You go a tier deeper.
Yeah. And they were like, oh shit, this guy's on to us. They basically offered me $100. I was like, fuck you guys. And I sold it.
Yeah. Wait, they offered you money?
Yeah, they offered me literally.
Dude, you should have fucking recorded the conversation. And you probably could have
I was working
taken
a part-time job washing dishes. I wasn't thinking about that. I was just angry.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yo, so question then. So this is you mentioned you're working part-time then. Are you doing just YouTube now? Is that?
Yeah.
That's fucking sick.
Or YouTube and music or something?
Yeah.
It's YouTube, music,
and
video
music
editing.
Dude, that's so sick.
Because thanks to Bill, I have a couple of clients. He's kind of given me a portfolio to sort of like show people. I'm like, hey, I did this.
Yeah, so
do this for you.
like, dude, I don't know if you know Dalton, but like I have a website and I have like premium content on there, and that's kind of like how I make a bunch of my money as well. So I just put out this series called The Art of Mr. Bill Season 4, which is basically like a long form series. It goes for 13 hours, and it's like just me in the studio in this studio here. Well, actually, my old studio, but same building. Just writing a song for 13 hours, basically. So we did it over about a week, and we recorded like 1 or 2 episodes a day. And Gardner like filmed and edited the whole thing. It's like a multi-camera, like 3-camera setup with like really good editing and stuff.
If you want to download the DaVinci project file, you can vomit. Dude, it's the craziest project file I've got. It's so crazy.
Yeah, because I'm definitely. I mean, I'm familiar with the content you put out, because I've been checking out everything with YouTube, like what you put out privately, like with Art of Bill. I mean, it's sick. It's awesome, man, and it's cool that I don't know. I love having these conversations, because where I came from before I started podcasting, before I started working on music, is just like such the straight and narrow. It's like, get a degree, work here. And it's like, all right, well, fuck this.
You can be like entrepreneurial about it and start doing some pretty niche jobs. Like recording and editing a series for me has got to be the most niche job on the planet.
You're like, dude, but it was like essential to like what my career's become.
Yeah, it's sick that you've gotten more jobs out of that.
Yeah. Like
That's awesome, man.
I can show people, hey, here's a 13-hour series I edited. Would you like me to do your 5-minute YouTube video?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, dude, I got to get back onto the YouTube game.
We should do, if you guys are into it, we should do a podcast with us 3, like from start to finish, where we like get, because I've been recording this. Gardner, I don't know if you were recording your end. If you are, it's fucking awesome. We can put it, but like we should do one where it's like, you know, we because this has been. It's been sick. I love this.
I don't consent to you recording me. What the
fuck? No, if you're not recording, if you're not
right.
recording, then unless Bill, you're getting everything. I don't know if it's
I'm getting all 3. Yeah.
Oh, sick. Okay. Cool.
So I haven't stopped recording like at any point in time. So
okay.
Currently, what I'm going to send you is a video of just me sitting in my studio with all 3 voices.
I'm telling my mum.
You just become like pseudo British every time you get angry about someone recording you.
Yeah, dude, you didn't even know this is all going on the internet.
That's my voice I use when I make fun of Bill. It's not even a good Australian accent. Like it's just like total bullshit.
I didn't even think it was Australian.
Yeah,
my name's Bill. I don't like change.
Okay.
Fuck, dude.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, dude, like this has been fucking sick, man. For real, like
this has been the best podcast I've done. I think like most podcasts that I do, like someone's like, "Oh, do a podcast," and then you come on and they're like, "So, what are your main influences?" And it's like, this is a fucking standard, basic interview, dude. Get
Hell yeah, I appreciate that, because that's the stuff that just makes it, honestly, like makes me cringe. I try my best to like not. There are some questions, you know, like because when we were just first starting, when we were gonna jump into it, I'm like, I'm gonna ask about, you know, how you started, and we didn't even go there. But usually there'll be some of that, but then it leads into just real raw conversation. But I like that we just fucking dove in.
Yeah.
Sometimes I just throw like a weird answer in, like Aaron Carter and Billy Mays. People are like, what? Like fucking.
I think
Grant McDonald.
Oh, dude, Grant McDonald is insane. Dude,
Grant McDonald's my solidest influence ever.
I think there's enough, like for most musicians at least, and most probably visual artists at this point too, just most fucking people on the planet, there's enough information about you already on the internet for people if they really want to dig to go find out these things. So I think podcasts are like a good way to have some different conversations with some extra like special emotional weighting on it and stuff like that.
Right. Not just because exactly, people can go if they want to know, you know, when you started writing music and shit. Although it's good to talk about, like people can find that, you know. And if you just have canned questions, no one's no one's going to care about that. But like,
again, it's like it comes down to the zeal thing, right? It's like, when the interviewer is giving you canned questions, they never feel that stoked about it. Like,
right.
You can always tell, like, when an interviewer is doing that and you're like, dude, you're awkward. I'm awkward. Everything's awkward. Why are we doing this?
Yeah. No, dude, that, and it's always funny, man. Like, I'll prepare, like I'll do a ton of research. I'll have notes, I'm like, okay. And then they end up, cause I'll get not nervous, but I'm like, getting ready, I'm kind of thinking like, okay, and then it starts and then we just go on a fucking rabbit hole. And then it's like, who cares? Like,
like, oh, sweet.
And that's what I want at the end of the day. Yeah.
Yeah. That's it, man. That's the best way to do it. Especially like you're having a beer while you're doing it. I wish I could be having a beer while I'm doing it, but I'm doing the sober month.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Soon, dude.
You are going on a ride. 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 You are going on a ride.